And I read this report, and it is so bad what was taking place in this committee, what they were trying to do to Donald Trump.
We made a recommendation that the Department of Justice investigate Liz Cheney.
Liz Cheney's going down in this investigation. We're trying to provide you with more details. We've already covered this about Liz Cheney being exposed for witness tampering by her own standards.
Administration Subcommittee on Oversight, the committee that's been investigating January 6th, just released its final report for this year. It accuses Liz Cheney of tampering with the witness, Cassidy Hutchinson, trying to influence her testimony. It formally recommends that the Federal Bureau of Investigation criminally investigate Liz Cheney when President Trump takes over on January 20th.
Welcome to John Mike Keene. Here's the great one.
The report, the January 6th committee, and I read this report, and it is so bad what was taking place in this committee, what they were trying to do to Donald Trump, how they were manipulating witnesses and testimony, how they were censoring information, and the massive destruction. I mean, it is a massive amount of information that was destroyed, how they're trying to influence the criminal justice system. Congressman Barry Loudermilk is the chairman of this effort.
Barry Loudermilk did great work on this, but what it exposes is that this isn't your justice system isn't pursuing justice. They had a preferred end and agenda. They wanted to get Trump impeached. They used all this information to go after Trump's allies and friends, including Roger Stone, Steve Bannon, General Flynn, you name it. If you're in the Trump circle, they felt like it was open season on them. And this is Nancy Pelosi helped put this thing together. They're influencing all the stuff behind the scenes. Chuck Schumer. They only had Liz Cheney be their figurehead because she had the R next to her name. They wanted it to look like it was bipartisan. But bipartisan would assume that some Trump supporters would actually be on this investigation, but they weren't. Guys like Tim Burchett put his name in. They said they weren't interested in his testimony. They weren't interested in anything they had to do with this thing. They only allowed people on this committee, any Republican on this J6 committee, had to already believe Trump was guilty for them to be allowed on the committee. That's why you have frauds like Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney on it, instead of anyone who is openly trying to look for facts and find out what happened. So you didn't get the truth. You got a puppet show presented to you with manipulated information.
That when the Trump administration steps in, there needs to be a federal grand jury that looks into the potential violation of federal laws here, because this is no joke. When you have a committee of Congress trying to instigate criminal investigations, you had two people, Steve Bannon and Peter Navarro, who actually went to federal prison as a result of referrals from this committee. And what took place here should never take place again against any president or former president of the United States. Do you agree? I mean, if they want to play in the criminal realm, then the criminal realm is where we ought to play.
Well, that's true. And, we've been asked all along as we've uncovered things and as you've covered this so well throughout the last 2 years, what about accountability? And my response has always been, well, that is something that is really an executive branch because we don't have law enforcement capability, but I would never trust this Department of Justice to hand out justice equally. So they've proven that they will not. But now we're moving into a new era, and with the Trump Department of Justice, they can move forward with this. That's why we made a recommendation that the Department of Justice investigate Liz Cheney for potential violations of federal law.
Liz Cheney violated federal law. Donald Trump didn't. Steve Bannon didn't. Peter Navarro didn't. Liz Cheney did.
One of several bombshell revelations in here. The report also says that Jack Smith colluded with the January 6th committee, but that some of the evidence has not yet been turned over to Congress. They're demanding that evidence be turned over, something that might happen when the new administration takes over. But a really significant and rare moment for Congress to actually suggest that one of its members should be criminally prosecuted for tampering with a witness in an official government proceeding, a House hearing, the January 6th House hearing. As you remember, Cassidy Hutchinson was the bombshell witness for the Democrats, claimed that Donald Trump tried to commandeer the presidential limousine, take it to the Capitol. We now know that wasn't true. The Secret Service had already told Liz Cheney it wasn't true. She presented the evidence anyways to the American public, tried to give it credence. There's some other testimony where Cassidy Hutchinson talks about a document she claims she wrote it. She didn't. Someone else wrote it.
We covered a little bit of this where she is witness tampering. She's supposed to be open. She's not supposed to be helping or manipulating anything. And we found out through a text between, this actually involves Elisa Farrah Griffin from The View. We talked about that already, that she's been helping witnesses come up with better testimony against Donald Trump, trying to talk to them without their lawyers present, getting her lawyers fired. And then Liz Cheney said Trump's the one who tried to call someone, and so he has to be submitted to an investigation. Well, by that same standard, Liz Cheney now must be submitted to an investigation. That's not revenge. This is pursuing justice by their own standards.
And I'm only using Liz's own standards that she used. If you go back to July of 2022, in one of their televised hearings, Liz Cheney started talking about Donald Trump making a phone call to one of their witnesses. It wasn't even successful. He just attempted to make a phone call to someone they had interviewed. She then referred that to the Department of Justice of potential witness tampering, just because he attempted to make a phone call. Now compare that to what we have the evidence that Liz Cheney actually did. She did communicate with Cassidy Hutchinson. She did acknowledge that it was inappropriate communications. After she communicated with Cassidy Hutchinson then changed her testimony. And then, according to Cassidy Hutchinson, Liz Cheney did encourage her to fire her previous attorney, Stefan Passantino. Then Liz Cheney did help her find a new attorney. And then Liz Cheney did try to get Stefan Passantino disbarred in Georgia and D.C.
That Loudermilk could start this investigation now, or I'm waiting for the new Department of Justice, DOJ head, Attorney General Pam Bondi.
Liz Cheney could be facing an FBI criminal investigation based on this information that Congress has transmitted this morning.
John, a quick follow-up real quick. I'm looking at witness tampering, obviously a federal crime, up to potentially 20 years in prison if this is witness tampering.
It's a very serious allegation. And as we now know from the reporting we did a few months ago, Liz Cheney was communicating to Cassidy Hutchinson around her lawyer. She was represented by a lawyer. When you go out and reach out to someone around their lawyer, you're violating the D.C. bar ethics, which, by the way, Liz Cheney was a barred lawyer in D.C., so she was obligated to follow those rules. But it goes beyond that. It suggests that she was trying to influence the testimony, get her to say things that would make Donald Trump look worse. This is a very serious allegation from Chairman Barry Loudermilk, the head of this committee, the guy who's run the counter January 6th investigation that has found so many things we were denied and not told about in the earlier probe. But a really significant moment today. And you're right. If the FBI were to pursue charges, this would be a very serious crime and one that could carry some serious prison time.
Pam Bondi gets approved. They could cut her loose on this one. Now, it's also possible that Joe Biden preemptively gives a blanket pardon to Liz Cheney. I'm looking forward to that too. I'm going to explain to you in the next segment why that does not injure or harm Donald Trump, but it could actually benefit him.
So these are the things that she did, but she said just because Donald Trump attempted to make a phone call, then he should be investigated. This is why we're saying, look, I can't make that determination, but the Department of Justice can.
Well, I can't imagine she has anything to hide. They just destroyed a zillion pieces of data and video and so forth and so on. Right. Seems to me Nancy Pelosi needs to be examined. A number of these people need to be examined because there was a lot going on in the shadows here. People were giving orders. Somebody gave orders to destroy all this information. Somebody gave orders to try and influence witnesses. Somebody gave orders to try and prevent other witnesses from giving timely testimony. Somebody called in Hollywood to create these productions.
Someone called in Hollywood. Remember, Hollywood covered this whole thing. And he mentions Nancy Pelosi. So Nancy Pelosi could be the one who was behind, she has a lot of contacts in California for this ABC and these art directors and these directors to come in and cover the J6 hearings. Now, here's where it could be in Trump's favor for her to get. Trump probably does not want to dig that deep in the weeds and deal with this boring lawsuit against Liz Cheney. I'm interested in it. I think it's fine if it goes through. But I think Trump actually hopes she gets pardoned. If she gets pardoned, Trump can claim the moral high ground and flat out say they're pardoning her because she's guilty. She will be assumed guilty if she gets pardoned. No one who gets a pardon is going to be assumed innocent. In culture, in the way that we run culture now, she is not going to get off. So if they pardon her, then you don't have to go through this hearing and you can declare her guilty. I think that's a huge win for Trump. And then he can move on with his agenda to fix America.
We cannot have these Stalinist type events and then pretend it's okay because the media are on the side of the Stalinists. That cannot go on. Barry Loudermilk, I want to thank you, your staff. You've done a great service to the American people. This is a fantastic report.
That's the interim report. We're going to keep covering it if more developments happen.
John, apart from Liz Cheney, you mentioned another name that I think is pretty big, Jack Smith. You said that he's named in this report. No referral for Jack Smith, but your expectation is that under Kash Patel, the FBI then would also be investigating him?
There is some evidence that Congress is trying to get its hands on that suggests that Jack Smith was colluding and working with the Democrats to take down Donald Trump. They don't have the evidence. They know what it is. They're seeking it from the FBI and the Justice Department. The hope is, in this report expressed, that when the new administration comes over, Congress will finally get that evidence and will know exactly what it was that Jack Smith was doing with the Justice Department, with the J6 committee. Remember, we also believe that Jack Smith may have had contacts, as did the Biden White House, with some of these local prosecutors in Georgia and New York. So,
John Mike Keene.